Okay, hi Kate. Welcome back to our final video in the series of 3. So we're just about to head into the Easter break, and we don't want to miss an opportunity of thinking about the kids. They've only been back 3 weeks, then they're going to be on Easter break, then they're going to be back again. And so actually these 3 videos will work well after Easter as well. So welcome back to you, Kate. And as all the parents know, Kate is a psychologist that works locally, and she's part of the national organisation Mind and Soul Foundation. That's available on the website if you want to see it. So let's talk about routine, I think, because they've had the routine of school for 3 weeks. Then they're going to Easter, where there'll be no routine, they can relax in the holidays. Then they're going to come back into routine again of school.
Yeah, there's been so much change and adjustment, hasn't there? Look, I mean, my son's 8. He can't quite believe his luck. He keeps saying to me, do I really break up on Friday, Mummy? Is it really the holidays? And he's like, and there's no homeschool. And I'm like, no, I know. You just get to lie around at home. So I think it's been such a season of change and adjustment. And the disruption of pandemic has been hard for all of us in the way that it's affected our routine. We spoke about that way back in the first of our 3 videos. And of course, so this Easter holiday is another change for them. And actually, although it is the holidays, that again might be a challenge for some children who are just starting in the 3rd week to get back into the swing of things. The first couple of weeks were so about adjusting back to that. This week is starting to feel more like kids are getting into the flow of it. They know where they're at with it, and then it's going to stop. So I think whilst it's really good for them to have the break, we do need to think about, are there key things in their routine that we can keep up just to help them?
Okay.
Key moments in their week, regular things like the obvious things like regular meal times, but also bedtime routines, other things that we have in our family rhythm that we can keep regular through these 2 weeks. I think that will, it's like, things in our routines like that, they're like stepping stones across a river, and it really helps children to know where the next one is. The next thing, they know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and that's a regular thing. So it's a good thing to think about.
It's interesting you say about keeping that sleep routine, because obviously sleeping sometimes, certainly with the kids that are beginning to feel anxious about coming back to school after Easter, they may struggle with their sleeping. Have you got any advice for parents if their children are struggling more with sleeping?
Yeah, I mean, sleep problems are a really common challenge with children. Obviously, right down at the beginning when they're little, they have to learn how to sleep. We think sleep is just a natural instinct, but babies and small children do need to learn how to get into that good sleep-wake cycle and a good pattern of sleeping. And I think one thing that's really important to know is that very often I'll hear people say like, oh, so my child, they've never been a good sleeper. I'm not a good sleeper. Actually, sleep is something that is learned. So some people are just naturally really good at it. I'm married to my husband's one of those people who can like be having a lively animated conversation and it's like a switch. He's asleep snoring within about 1 second. It's so annoying. I'm someone who has to ease very gradually from sort of wakefulness into sleep. And there is a bit of a continuum. We're all in different places on that. Some people are better at naturally sleeping than others, but we can all learn. We can all get better at sleeping, and there are things that we can all do. And there are times in childhood and the teenage years when sleep becomes more difficult. So obviously when they're little, but also in the teenage years, there's so much going on in the teenage mind. It can make it harder for them to sleep. But also as they're entering adolescence, because of the changes in some of their hormones, they actually start to operate with their sleep-wake pattern on a sort of 2 to 4 hour delay. It's like having a sort of version of jet lag. So they find it really hard to go to bed at a sensible hour, and they like to sleep late. And over lockdown, a lot of teenagers shifted into that sort of later pattern and have found it really hard getting back into going to bed early, getting up early, going to school. So there are seasons when it can be hard. And the weird thing is that sleep is supposed to be natural, but it's surprisingly hard to make yourself do it. If you lie down and just try to go to sleep, it's actually really hard. And once it gets caught up with emotions like anxiety or worry or frustration, that makes it even harder, because the more tense, the more sort of wound up you get, the harder it is to switch off. So there are a couple of things that we can do to help our kids sleep, and actually routine is really part of that, and that might be daytime routine. So part of how easy or hard it is to sleep is to do with where your baseline stress level is.
Okay.
So a lot of it's about what you're doing in your day. You know, can you do things in your day that are about helping you to relax, helping drop that level? Our kids right now are a little bit wired still with all the change and things that they've been dealing with. So over the holiday, taking the chance just to let them play more. You know, it's so tempting to think, gosh, well, they need to catch up on spellings or maths or whatever, but let's make sure that they catch up on rest and relaxation as well, because it will help them with their sleep and with their general well-being. Then I think at nighttime, it is about routine. You know, it's a huge change for your mind, the difference between being awake and asleep. And most of us do need to ease ourselves between those two states. And routine is what tells your brain or your child's brain that they're about to need to go to sleep. So that classic bedtime routine, you know, bath, stories, and then bed, or whatever it is that people do in their household, that actually really helps. And the consistency of keeping to that routine, I mean, you don't have to do it every single night of your life, but pretty much that's what you do. And I know in our family we have that routine with my son, and even if we're on holiday, if we're going away, even if it's super late, even if we only read something for like 2 minutes, we will follow as much as we can that routine, because it just really helps him. See, now he's getting older, he reads to himself sometimes as well, but learning to switch off. And remember, you're teaching your children skills that will be immensely valuable for the rest of their life. I see so many adults who struggle with sleep. If you can teach your kids how to do sleep routine really well, that's a tremendous gift to them. So it's routine at bedtime. It's also routine in terms of consistency around your whole sleep-wake cycle. So you have hormones in your mind that peak and trough at different times of day, and they influence how awake or drowsy you feel. And that's why the advice is, if you're someone who's prone to struggling with sleep, to try to stick to roughly the same pattern. You get up at roughly the same time each day. You go to sleep at roughly the same time. And again, it doesn't mean you have to do that every day of your life. You know, of course it's fine to have a late night from time to time, a bit of a sleep in sometimes, but it will really help if you try and keep that consistency. And that helps with children throughout the holiday. So I'm not saying that you should set the alarm for 7 a.m. even though they don't have to go to school, but maybe trying to avoid, particularly for the older ones, if they can avoid shifting back into that really late pattern again, it will help them in the long run. And then I guess just a couple of other things to watch with children. So one of them is handheld devices. So there is good research coming in that your phone or your handheld device, it shines a type of blue light into the back of your eyes. You have cells at the back of your eye that are directly linked with the part of your brain that controls sleep-wake cycle. So if you're reading your phone last thing before you try to go to sleep, and you're prone to struggling with falling asleep, the studies show that it can make that harder. And that it's actually, the studies show it delays it by sort of 10 to 15 minutes. So it's not a massive deal. But if you are prone to sleep problems, that's enough to make you anxious. And then that will keep you awake. So it's worth thinking about that, talking to your kids maybe about stopping half an hour to an hour before they go to sleep. Even having your phone in the room when you sleep, subconsciously, your brain doesn't switch off as well, because it kind of knows it's there. The temptation is to check it or wonder what's going on. For teenagers, that they may well be checking it as well. I'm amazed how much is going on my daughter's like WhatsApp groups and stuff at like 3 a.m. for what she doesn't check them then, but she tells me about it the next day. So maybe have some conversations around phones and help your teenagers to make good decisions. And then the other thing really is caffeine. So there's quite a strong caffeine culture, particularly again amongst teenagers. And hey, I'm talking to you. I have my coffee here, so I am just as guilty about this. But be aware, caffeine has a surprisingly long half-life. It stays in your system for a long time. So again, if you or your children struggle with sleep, it's something to be aware of. Not drinking anything that's got caffeine in after lunchtime. And some people who are really prone to the impact of caffeine will notice it even from eating chocolate. So thinking even about things like that in the evening, just before you go to bed, you know, drinking hot chocolate, eating chocolatey things, it's worth paying attention to that, and watching energy drinks with teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
So I have worked with a few teens who cannot understand why they can't sleep. And then when you look into their pattern, it turns out they're drinking things like Monster, some of these energy drinks that have got so much caffeine.
Terrible, yeah.
I would be bouncing off the walls if I'd had one of those just before I went to sleep. So just being aware of some of those practicalities too.
And it's interesting actually with caffeine, how it affects, because I can drink coffee just before I go to bed and it has no effect on me whatsoever. It's quite strange. Now, talking about anxiety and stress, Sydney is here and he's digging under the bookshelf at the moment. So apologies if you can hear scrabbling around. He's now looking at me, waiting for me to throw a ball or something. So when sleep is disturbed from anxiety or stress, or that the child feels that it's interfering, you know, what's your advice then?
Yeah, and remember, we've talked in previous videos that anxiety is like your brain's smoke alarm. It's trying to get your attention because there's something that you need to think about, to process, to decide whether you need to do something about it. And children right now are dealing with a lot of change, a lot that they may be unsure about, that their brain may be triggering more anxiety than usual. And sometimes our problem is that life is so busy, we don't have time to respond to that trigger. It's like a warning light going on the dashboard of your car and you're just sort of ignoring it. And when we go to sleep, we are thinking, great, now's the time we can switch off. Some people's minds are thinking, finally, I can get your attention. I've been trying all day. And so you're trying to turn your brain off and your brain is like, right, now you need to think about this thing that you've not been thinking about all day. And that happens to our children too. Sometimes when they're lying there in the quiet and the dark, it's when their minds start to tip things over and then they will struggle to sleep. So the solution to a problem at night is what you do in the day. Okay. Can you create some spaces where your children have got the time and they've got the security and they've got the support to process some of that stuff when they're awake, so that then they're free at night just to switch off and drift off into sleep. So thinking about how we can support them with some of those things. It may be spaces to actually have conversations. Younger children, it may be about play or drawing or even just the running around that can somehow help them just run off that excess tension and energy that's resulting from some of that anxiety. All of that stuff can help. And remember what I said earlier as well, if all of that stress and anxiety is raising their baseline, that will make it harder to sleep too. So anything that's fun, anything that's relaxing, you know, I cannot emphasize enough how much our children do just need to have 2 weeks of rest. And fun and color this holiday, perhaps more than they've ever needed before, because they've worked hard. This has been difficult for them, just like it's been difficult for us. So I think that having that break will actually hopefully help a lot of them to sleep better.
That's good. And hopefully we'll have some decent weather and they can be outside. And I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think it's quite important for children to get bored sometimes, to not be filled with something to do each moment, so that they can produce their own.
Remember that processing time can be active in that you're having conversations or doing something, but for all of us, sometimes that processing time is just headspace. It is the quiet, so that your mind can wander. And if the only quiet that you or your child has is at night, then their minds will wander then and they probably won't sleep. So it may be about needing to create some empty space and time. And I think your point about the weather is a good one as well. It's another thing that can help us sleep, getting out into the fresh air and being exposed to sunlight, you know, some clarity between day and night. And through lockdown, because it's been the winter and it's been grey, a lot of us have been stuck in the house for a long time. So some of our children, they do need to just run wild a little bit.
Our days have merged, haven't they? Very much so. Definitely. Right. Well, I can see a little dog here that would like to go out for a bit.
Somebody else who wants to go and run wild, I think.
He does want to run wild in the fields. Yes, plenty of fields here. Kate, thank you so much for doing these 3 sessions. Oh, and there he is.
Oh, there he is.
There you said hello now. What I think, if parents, I know that parents have watched these and I've had some feedback that they've really enjoyed it. So what we'll do is you know, if they have any questions that they would like to raise with you, we can think about that for next term going into September. And we can think about doing things again. But these 3 sessions, I think they'll be really good, because they will work next term as well, because we've done a sort of start, a middle and a finish. But if they've got any, if they've got something that they want some advice on, they can give me an email, give me a call, and then we can think about that at perhaps a later stage.
Yeah. I mean, as we said, I'm a parent and a psychologist, so I know there are so many topics as a parent that you sometimes hit and you don't really know. How do I deal with this?
Absolutely.
So if there are topics that it would help for us to cover, we can do that.
We can do that. We can perhaps, if a few people email in, we can gather some, and then we can do some sessions at a later date. Brilliant. Kate, thank you so much for your time. It's been great. I've enjoyed these 3 sessions. Sydney's enjoyed this last one. He's enjoyed meeting you. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, have a great Easter, everyone.
And you, yes, thank you.